energy. People know what they want. They want energy that is available, affordable, and reliable. And yet Joe Biden has now commanded the EPA to prioritize climate change over energy that is available, reliable, or affordable. The EPA is now the evil empire as it attacks American energy prosperity, American energy production. The EPA is aggressively attempting to shut down coal-fired power plants, natural gas-fired power plants, while there is no other source of energy to replace it. Trying to shut down something that has worked for a long, long time when there is nothing available to replace it is foolish. It's harmful. Even the bipartisan members of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission have all testified in the Senate that this is undermining the grid of power in the United States, and it is their job to look after the grid. All across the country we're seeing areas, and this is a chart of summer grid reliability risk, elevated risk, large swaths of the country, elevated risk to our grid as a result of the administration, and what the President is doing is making it worse. The EPA, with their incredibly painful regulations, is undermining our ability, sabotaging American energy. And the American public are going to be paying the price and suffering the pain. If you want to keep the lights on, you want to keep the country secure, you need affordable, reliable baseline power. And that's why every Republican on the Senate Energy Committee has joined me as co-sponsors of a permitting reform bill called the SPUR Act. And it unleashes all American energy, which is exactly what we need for affordable, available, and reliable energy for our nation.
Washington's spending has really been very reckless and out of control. And so far, I've been able to track down about $1.3 billion that have gone towards worthless pet projects with our adversaries overseas, Russia and China. And folks, I have the receipts, and I'll just give you a couple of examples of this egregious spending, again, in Russia and China. The first one is over $2 million of risky research that have gone where? To the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We're very familiar with that. But the price tag is higher than we originally anticipated. And that research was done with fear in mice and bats where they were experimenting with the coronavirus, and we see how all of that ended up. Again, that was U.S. taxpayer dollars that went to China. Now, in Russia, what we have tracked down is about $770,000 that went to research putting cats on treadmills. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you give me $770,000, I'm happy to get on a treadmill right here in the United States of America. But yes, we continue to send money overseas to our adversaries, Russia, China. So far, again, we've unearthed about $1.3 billion. And after the debate we had last week with the debt ceiling, no wonder our taxpayers are angry when we see dollars going to these worthless projects to the people around the world that hate us the most. Again, Russia and China. So I'm trying to track down more dollars that we have spent wastefully with our adversaries. But I do have a solution, and that is a bill that I am introducing. It's called the TRACS Act, and it would force our federal government to track those dollars that are going to Russia and China, provide transparency. Hopefully we can prevent that kind of spending in the future.
Well, thank you all for being here. And last week, it's sort of slow this week, which is kind of nice after last week. But with the debt ceiling bill, which I voted for as well, had, I think, a lot of good solutions in it. And one of those that's particular to me is the permitting reform coupled with the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Within days, we will see thousands of West Virginians and others who are going to be constructing the remaining 5% of the pipeline that's still remaining. We'll see product beginning to flow at the beginning of the year, millions of dollars going into the tax revenues of West Virginia and Virginia. And so I'm very pleased that a pipeline that's been in the making for 8 years has been permitted by just about everybody, if not everybody, once or twice, is now going to be moving and making our eastern seaboard more energy secure. So there's another challenge in that bill. The challenge is, and the leader spoke to it, is the 12 appropriations bills that have yet to be passed. I am a member of the Appropriations Committee. I am the ranking member on the Health Subcommittee, one of the largest bills that we will be considering. We, as members of the Appropriations Committee, are welcoming the challenge of writing bills that are actually going to get onto the floor. We have debate. We have member input from everybody, from all areas of the country, both Republicans and Democrats, to try to forge the compromise that we desperately need. And we know with the leadership of Senator Collins, for us Republicans, we couldn't be in better hands. She's deeply committed to this. She knows the process, and as we all know, she does her homework much more deeply than any other member that I know. And so if there's a will, there's a way, and she has a lot of will as along with the rest of us. It's in our best interest as a country. It's in our best interest as institutions to get back on track. And I'm certainly committed to it, and I believe this body's committed to it as well.
If you woke up in Washington, D.C. this morning, you might have awakened to the sound of birds coughing. You're all getting a first-hand account and experience of the smoky summers that we have out west in places like Montana. And it gets old real fast. Now, in this case, it's wildfires in Canada that are causing the smoke to hover over New York and coming down here in the Washington, D.C. area. So folks on the East Coast are as sick and tired of breathing the smoke as Montanans are during the summer months. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you have more lawyers in your forest crawling around versus loggers, and when your forests aren't managed properly. Washington bureaucrats and the court system in our country continue to give us policies that can result in air quality like this. But there's good news. We have a fix for this. There is a remedy. We need to fully and permanently reverse the disastrous Ninth Circuit Cottonwood decision. This is a decision from 8 years ago that we are still trying to make right. Now, here's the good news. The past 3 administrations, sportsman groups, conservation groups have supported this fix. The support is broad. It's bipartisan. In fact, it passed most recently through the ENR committee by a voice vote. This would return some common sense forest management that will help with improving watersheds, improving wildlife, reducing risk of wildfires, and it's a great thing for workers, getting the timber industry back into the forests and supplying badly needed building materials. The bottom line is this: we either better manage our forests or our forests manage us.
How can you ensure that Congress will, in fact, pass another Ukraine supplemental when the Speaker has said that he's opposed to a Ukraine supplemental?
Well, all I can tell you at this particular point is defense is radically underfunded related to the Chinese threat, and Ukraine probably will need additional assistance. So figuring out how to do this is going to be a challenge.
Have you spoken to the Speaker about this yet?
Mr. Leader, do you have any comment on the merger between the PGA and LivGolf? Do you think this is something that Congress should look into in terms of its oversight, especially given LivGolf's connection to Saudi Arabia?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time picking up what you said.
The merger between the two big golf leagues, the PGA and Live Golf. The Live Golf is associated with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Is that something Congress should look into?
Look, I don't really have anything to say about that. It strikes me as not a governmental concern.
On AI, Majority Leader Schumer has put together this bipartisan task force, and they are going to have briefings for all senators on AI. What are your concerns as it relates to AI?
Repeat that again.
On AI, are you concerned at all about artificial intelligence, and what are your concerns related to that? How should Congress address it?
What is my concern about?
Artificial intelligence.
About what? I had a hard time hearing your voice. Sorry about
On artificial intelligence?
AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's concerned about AI. The issue is what, if any, role does the government have to play here? We did the CHIPS bill last year, and part of that money is dedicated to AI. It could be a brave new world, and it's going to be interesting to see what role, if any, the government plays in sorting all that out.
All right, good morning, or good afternoon. McConnell was here in the morning, I heard, a little early. Okay, I want to thank Senators Gillibrand, Coons, Cortez Masto, and Kelly for joining me today. Now, as you know, last week Congress passed legislation averting a catastrophic default, all while preserving the most important and consequential investments we've made through legislation like the CHIPS and Science Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. Now money is going into these communities and revolutionizing towns throughout the country. This means critical investments for our communities, and that means jobs, 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 jobs across America. And as we enter the wildfire season here in the U.S., and while New York State and the East Coast are engulfed in smoke from wildfires in Canada, we are reminded that the climate crisis is real and it is here. And that's why we're taking action. The Biden administration is getting out $7 billion in funding to fight wildfires from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. That's a historic investment in building our firefighter workforce and purchasing new technology to beat back fires. And those investments are critical for our future. But it's vital that we do what we can to protect vulnerable communities from the smoke already in the air. Legislation passed like the American Rescue Plan delivered funds for schools to upgrade their air infiltration and purification systems, so important on days like today. There'll be schools that have cleaner air in them in the Northeast because of the legislation we passed and the dollars that were implemented. But it's not just the investments to make our country safer and improve our communities, but also the jobs we're creating. Democrats have created more than 13 million jobs, 13 million, and more are on the way. The historic bills we passed have dramatic impact in two areas. Not only are we addressing the major threats to our nation, like climate change and Chinese government interference, but we're creating millions of jobs and spurring billions in private investment. Thanks to President Biden and congressional Democrats, 32,000 infrastructure projects, $470 billion in private sector funding is flowing to states across the whole nation, including $214 billion in investment towards semiconductors, which was largely made possible thanks to the CHIPS and Science Act. More than $200 billion to help make America the leader in clean energy manufacturing, led by legislation like the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. And these investments include everything from new battery plants in Georgia and West Virginia, to solar facilities in Oklahoma and South Carolina, to new wind turbine assembly lines in New York, and so much more. These are just a few examples of how Democrats' agenda is paving the way for jobs for the future. A huge number, 13 million. Compare that to previous administrations, particularly the last one. Implementation will remain at the top of Democratic priorities. We're spending lots of time making sure all the great legislation we passed and got signed into law is now implemented properly, and we're having a great deal of success with it. And it's going to remain our priority in the years ahead. Democrats have a great story to tell the American people, and now we're putting in the work to make sure that people know precisely how our agenda will work for them. And now my good friend and partner in New York, Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. First of all, I want to thank Senator Schumer for his dogged leadership, his vision, especially during the most recent debt ceiling negotiations. Senator Schumer has continued to deliver when it matters most, not just for New York, but for the whole country. And make no mistake, where this place started with Speaker McCarthy's jobs killer bill to where it ended really made the difference. The fight wasn't easy, but we defeated McCarthy's bill and preserved the core of the Democratic agenda, the job creation agenda. The American people sent us here to fight for them, to help build a better future for their families. And that's what we've been doing and fighting for since day one, to grow our economy, create jobs, and bring opportunities and revitalization to all communities. Thanks to President Biden's leadership, New York has already received billions of dollars in funding to create jobs, invest in domestic manufacturing, and rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. The CHIPS and Science Act brought massive investments to New York's semiconductor manufacturing industry and encouraged private companies to invest billions of dollars into a 21st century economy and industry. Following its passage, Micron announced plans to build a $100 billion mega complex of chip plants near Syracuse. Our state also received increased funding to rebuild our infrastructure. Senator Schumer and I were just in Buffalo with Secretary Buttigieg and Governor Hochul to announce $55 million in funding to construct a new highway, cap and tunnel over the Kensington Expressway, the construction of which originally divided the Buffalo community, displacing residents and cutting workers and businesses off from the local economy. That $55 million will help reconnect divided communities, provide residents with greater access to green space, amenities, and jobs. Most importantly, this funding will create more jobs. I am very grateful that key provisions from my Build Local, Hire Local bill was added to the bipartisan infrastructure law. It encourages state and local governments to hire local workers to do this work. It can right the wrongs of the past. It can benefit those who need the most help. And when we train and hire local workers, we create an entire generation of people trained to build and maintain our infrastructure moving forward. We create better opportunities for generational wealth building in underserved communities. And we lay the foundation for a stronger workforce in the future. Since its passage, the Biden administration has awarded over $220 billion in funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law, aimed at repairing roads and bridges, delivering clean water, deploying high-speed internet, rural broadband, and building clean energy transportation infrastructure. Roads, bridges, jobs, that is the Democratic agenda.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Next we have Senator Coons.
Thank you, Leader Schumer, and thank you for your focus on the importance of manufacturing for the American economy. As you've heard from my two colleagues, Senators Gillibrand and Schumer, New York is experiencing a renaissance of investment in manufacturing on the ground in New York. So too is Delaware and dozens of other states across our country. Most Americans maybe have heard the acronyms and the large dollar numbers, the BIF, the IRA, the CHIPS and Science Act, the tens of billions of dollars, but they are now beginning to feel it and see it on the ground, with not just announcements but groundbreakings, the beginning of construction of new advanced manufacturing plants. yes, in the semiconductor chip industry, but in a dozen other industries as we finance the transition to a clean energy economy and as we create high-quality jobs across our country. In the first 2 years of the Biden administration, the private sector has created more high-skill, high-wage jobs and in particular seen a faster growth in manufacturing than in any other administration in decades. As someone who spent 8 years in the private sector in a manufacturing business that had sites in 5 different states, I've seen it. The difference that a high-wage manufacturing job makes for a family and for the surrounding community. We've seen big announcements, and we are beginning to see big changes in communities. I'll mention just a few. $5 billion for a semiconductor plant announced in Silver City, North Carolina. $3.5 billion in New Mexico for the Rio Rancho plant. And in my small state of Delaware, $50 million was just announced by the DuPont company to upgrade a plant in Glasgow that provides inputs into the semiconductor business. Why does this matter? Because this is an example not of federal investment, but of the private sector mirroring and then amplifying federal investment. All told, businesses are investing over $200 billion in semiconductors, $130 billion in EVs and batteries. These are plants and jobs that wouldn't be there without our legislation and our work. China is making massive investments in their manufacturing capacity, in their competitiveness with us. Finally, in the last 2 years, because of the leadership of this caucus, of Senator Schumer, and of the Biden administration, we are not just catching up, we are leading the world in new investment in the transition to a clean energy economy. Thank you.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader Schumer, for bringing us together here and for leading us through the negotiations to avoid default and save thousands of clean energy jobs in Nevada and millions across the country. We know that far-right Republicans threatened our economy and tried to hold our working families hostage, plain and simple, but we refused to allow it. The far-right's plan was to gut the Inflation Reduction Act and kill our clean energy economy and the millions of good-paying jobs that go with it. Now that we have defeated their efforts and avoided default, we can continue to focus on implementing that law and supporting our working families. Nevada is at the forefront of the clean energy economy, leading in solar, geothermal, and battery manufacturing. There are thousands of Nevadans in Las Vegas who install panels in our solar fields. I've seen them firsthand. I've visited and spent time with our IBEW at Gemini Solar Project, one of the new solar arrays in southern Nevada. These are good-paying jobs. These are union jobs. If we are going to keep building out the infrastructure for electric vehicles, we are also going to need lithium. And Nevada has enough lithium to power the world, the whole world, for the next 85 years. We are at the nexus of this clean energy economy, and we have the ecosystem to make it happen, not just in Nevada, but in this country, which will create great paying jobs for so many Americans across the country. That's why it was important for me and my colleagues to work to make sure this bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act invested not only in our critical mineral supply chain, but it also gave Nevada companies the opportunity to engage and start manufacturing and recycling the batteries that we need to power this clean energy future. Companies like Redwood Materials, American Battery Technology Company, and Lilac Solutions that are in Nevada and are creating almost 2,000 jobs for my state. Taken together, in my state, there are tens of thousands of families who depend on these clean energy jobs. And I'm proud that our party, we stuck together to protect them when we know that there were extreme Republicans who are willing to take away those jobs and those opportunities for working families. The legislation that we just passed kept our economy afloat and reinforced that we stand for American jobs, our clean energy future, and our working families. And finally, let me just say, what you are seeing happen on the East Coast with the weather conditions because of the fire, we see it quite often, unfortunately, in the West. This has become our norm. And it was important for all of us to fight in that bipartisan infrastructure package for that $8 billion. It is now being implemented in this country to address the wildfires that we see in the United States. We need to do more to address the prevention piece of it, the suppression, utilize the technology that's out there like wild alert cameras that we use in the West, as well as the remediation now when their fire has occurred in so many of our states. This is what's happening, and it's because the Democrats came together to really support long-term, not just overnight, but long-term funding to address these issues in the infrastructure package. I am proud the Democrats, in working with them, we were able to deliver for our working families in this country. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cortez Masto. Last but not least, Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. Thanks for bringing us together here. Over the past couple years, we've seen some big and real impacts to our country, but also in Arizona, where the legislation we've passed has had a really big impact. We've got a drought going on in the West. It's been going on now for 20 years. It's the biggest drought that this part of the planet, the worst drought that we have seen, that we know about for over 1,000 years. And the challenges that the West has faced because of this are great. Colorado River supplies 40 million people with water. It also helps grow a large portion of our food supply. Now, we worked to get the funding into the Inflation Reduction Act for water conservation, significant funding. And we also work closely with states and the Bureau of Reclamation. And I want to highlight a couple individuals here that were so critical to helping us address this problem, and that's Commissioner Camille Touton from the Bureau of Reclamation and Deputy Secretary Tommy Boudreau of the Department of Interior. They helped us maximize the resources that we put in the legislation. And this has already paid off. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, the lower Colorado River Basin states announced a proposal that's going to conserve 3 million acre-feet of water over a 3-year period. Now, that was only made possible by this legislation. And it goes a long way to helping us address this problem. Now, I imagine folks would also expect me to talk about chips, which I often do. Semiconductor chips is a big deal in the state of Arizona. But I want to highlight another industry that's growing in Arizona because of legislation. A couple of weeks ago, I visited a company called Li-Cycle. Secretary Granholm came with me. It's in Gilbert, Arizona, and it's also addressing the need for lithium. Now, Senator Cortez Masto mentioned that the state of Nevada has a lot of lithium. The other place we have a lot of lithium is in batteries already. And what this company does is they chop up existing batteries, car batteries, cell phone batteries, laptop batteries, storage batteries. And they extract the lithium, the cobalt, the copper. And these are the things that really strengthen our domestic supply chain and helps us reduce our reliance on foreign-sourced critical minerals, minerals that often come from China. Now, this company has received a loan from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law to build a facility that is going to help us meet a lot of our needs. It's a big win for our country. But in the state of Arizona, in addition to chips, we're seeing a growing number of battery manufacturers coming to our state. LG, Core Power, American Battery Factory Company, Heritage Battery Recycling, they are all choosing to build facilities and expand in the state of Arizona. So we're going to keep working on this. I mean, we've got tremendous opportunities over the last couple years. That's going to continue in the future, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that we solve some of these climate issues, but at the same time address our energy needs and our supply chain vulnerabilities from getting critical items from across an ocean. Thank you.
Thank you. And as you can see, our caucus is making a very, very strong and I think successful effort to let the American people know all the good things that we've done and how they're affecting them on the ground. Yes.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. 2 questions, one for you and the second for me.
One question. Pick one.
What is your reaction to the merger between the PGA Tour and Live Golf, the latter which is funded by the Saudis?
Well, look, I leave it up to the professionals there to figure out what's best for golf. Yes.
Do you still plan on bringing a resolution to the floor condemning the defunding of DOJ and FBI? What's the timing on that? And do you think House Republicans are still serious about doing that defunding?
Well, if you've seen the kind of votes that have been taken, we have shown as a Democratic caucus how strongly we feel about funding the police. And you've also seen the Republicans have made it clear in many of their proposals that they want to decrease that funding. So we think they've made it very clear. In their original bill, they cut law enforcement funding by a tremendous amount in the House bill. Look, she's a great nominee, and we're going to do everything we can to help her get confirmed. Yes?
There are several vacancies for the chiefs coming up at the General Brown, of course. Assuming Senator Tuberville does not release his poll, are you going to schedule for time?
Look, I think what Senator Tuberville has done is just awful. We believe that Republican senators, if they care about national security, but should be putting pressure on him to release those holds. What he's doing is very damaging to our security. Yes, next.
Do you have a plan B there if Republican senators put pressure on him? Do you plan to bring any of those nominations to the floor?
Bottom line is that this is a disgrace, what he is doing. It's risking our national security, and it's up to the Republican caucus to reject what he has done. Yes. I haven't seen too much discussion of that. Obviously, good trade between two friendly nations like the United States and UK is very important. Yes.
Will Julie Su get a vote on the Senate floor?
We are working very, very hard to get Julie Su confirmed. Yes, last one. His cloture vote was pulled because we didn't have full attendance, but we're going to move to get him passed.
We're going to bring any gun
Okay,
legislation.
thank you.
Thank you.
I know.
A Russian man claiming to hold top-level secrets about Russian advanced bombers has just turned up at the U.S. southern border, seeking asylum. The man claims to have been an engineer at a production facility over in the city of Kazan, and he says that he possesses top-secret information about the White Swan Tu-160, which is the most advanced bomber in the Russian arsenal. U.S. border officials, they interviewed the man, and they determined that his story was in fact credible and eventually passed him off to the FBI, who are still in the process of interrogating him right now. However, analysts have pointed out that the fact that the story was even leaked to the public is an indication that perhaps the American government is encouraging other Russians who also hold top-level secrets to also escape to America. And if you thought that was interesting, well then you should click on that button below this video and check out Epic TV, one of the best no-censorship video platforms on the internet. On there you will find awesome programs like American Thought Leaders.
We've now been, for 2 years, trying to obtain the unredacted emails. We're down to the last 50 pages. So that's where all the incriminating evidence is.
Crossroads.
One of the big things happening right now is what's taking place with Russia and China.
Counterpunch.
You will see information you've never seen anywhere else.
Facts Matter. I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free. As well as a plethora of great documentaries, wholesome movies that you can enjoy with your whole family.
If I reach 1 hour, I accomplish something.
Cooking programs, and my absolute favorite, programs about traditional art and traditional music, which can honestly uplift your mood and fill you with hope for the future. And the best thing about Epic TV, at least in my opinion, is that there's no corporate backing and there's no allegiance to some anti-American agenda.
How dare you come to this peaceful community and try to scam these people?
What the hell are you talking about? But rather, it's just good, honest, wholesome content that's based in truth and tradition.
I saw it. It was incredible.
Something that you can actually sit down with your whole family and enjoy, knowing that some ideology is not about to be pushed upon you.
And who's fighting it? We're fighting it here at Epoch Times, and we need to keep bringing you the news.
And so again, if you'd like to check out Epic TV, just click on that button below this video. You and your family will absolutely love it.